Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another wonderful episode of the Couples Corner. I am Katie Lemieux, licensed marriage and family therapist here in South Florida.
And I'm Susan Block, and I'm also a licensed marriage and family therapist in Coral Springs, Florida. And Katie and I are extremely passionate about the work that we do with couples in private practice. So thank you so much for tuning in.
Right, and we have a great guest and a great topic. She's awesome, full of energy. Her name is Alexia McLeod. She is going to be talking to us today and to you. So I want to adopt. Now what? So if you're a couple looking to adopt, she's going to share some tips and information with you guys to help you through the process.
Yeah, this can be an emotional topic for a lot of couples. So we're so happy that you're here to help them navigate through this.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about how you got started in your profession.
Oh, wow. Well, you know what? In my profession of adoption, my practice is split between the therapeutic side and between the adoption side. Adoption is just near and dear to my heart. And getting into it, I actually fell into working at an adoption-friendly hospital when I knew nothing about it.
Okay.
And like many other people, I thought that adoption was just, people that went in and they were saving all these babies that were unwanted. And what I found in working with adoption birth mothers was that these were these beautiful people that if they could, they would. Yeah. And it just became a passion of mine to be able to pour into their hearts as well too, to make sure that the process was a positive one from start to finish for not just the adoptive parents, but for the birth mothers as well. And it became a collaborative process to make sure that the whole process went well all the way through.
Yeah, you must be really passionate about this line of work,
I
and
love it.
It's got to be very emotional at times, I'm sure. But we're so happy to have you.
Thank you so much.
So can you share with the audience just a little bit about what you do, and then we'll get into some suggestions that you have for them.
Absolutely. Well, with my practice, it comes in several different forms, because a lot of people, when they think about adoption, they think about it only in one. Now adoption, there it goes from step-parent adoption, where people are married and it's their second marriage, and for the grace of God and all the goodness, the step-parent actually wants to adopt, and you can make a forever family that way. So this is one part of adoption that I do as well too. Also, when we talk about adoption, we talk about doing the therapeutic aspect for the birth mother to make sure that they're making the right decision. When an adoptive mother calls, it does not mean that they're set in stone and they're making that decision. It means that, guess what, this is a choice. Right. So, we talk about being pro-choice. We want to make sure that, this is the third choice that they have, to be able to discuss what their options are, and we're making the most appropriate and the best choice for them that they will have no regrets for. So that's what I work with, as well as with the potential adoptive parents, to make sure that we're making sure that all the clearances are done and the home studies are done. So that is another form of the adoptive services that I perform.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that's kind of like the gamut. And, like what Susan said, is you're just really passionate. I know you're my go-to adoption person. I have questions. I'm always giving you a call. Yes. So with the focus of our audience being on couples, so we're really looking at the adoptive parents today. So what are some of the tips and suggestions that you have about the process?
Well, I have some great tips. So I want to talk directly to the the couples today, potential adoptive parents. Tip number 1. Find out everything that you could know. Talk to other people when you are going through the or even considering the adoptive process. Read, go to the magazines, join an adoptive group. Learning is going to be one of your best allies, your assets. Tip number 2 is going to be to, investigate your different professionals that are out there within your local area, and check references as well too. Ask other people that have adopted before, and also ask the professionals that you trust, who is it that they might refer. That is going to be a great thing. As well, tip number 3 is going to be, to check yourself. As you're going through this process, as exciting as it is, it can be a little nerve-wracking.
Sure.
So getting therapeutic help throughout this process can not only help self-assess you, but for your whole family. Because everyone is going to give you some feedback, and sometimes you want some of that feedback and sometimes you don't. But it helps you to just go through the whole process a little bit smoother. Check number 4 is going to be to just really be able to go through an assessment. Really right now, you can pick what you want. This is a one time that you usually when you have a birth child your own, you can't pick a boy or a girl or the age or whatever else. Listen, this is your party, so have fun with it. These are the things that a lot of the stuff that you don't think about, and I want you to take your time and think about it and enjoy the process. But another part of it, what are you willing to go for? What do you want? Do you want a child with special needs? Do you have that heart that you want to adopt a child with special needs? Do you want to have an open adoption? These are the things that you want to start thinking about, but also know that the more specifications that you have during the adoptive process, sometimes the longer that process can take. But it is very good that you yourself know what you want. Okay? And number 5, my favorite tip, get that home study. Because without a home study, there's no adoption. So you have to start the process in order to go through. So as a therapist, I believe, and guess what? You have to affirm your truth. You know what you want to do, and you take the steps to get there. So get your home study done, and have somebody during your home study will walk you through the process and teach you, handhold you through exactly what you need to do in the adoption process.
Great tips, and I know I have some questions for you after sharing that. So you were talking about an open adoption. So what's the difference between an open and a closed adoption?
Well, now, in the days of now, many people, we promote open adoption, and that is where the adoptive family and the birth mother, they can get a chance to actually know each other during this process. It is, of course, monitored through the adoption professionals that are through there, but they can actually even go to the appointments together, and they may have dinners together, but you get a chance to know who you're adopting from, which there's no last names that are changed or anything of that nature. So there are protective factors that are there, but you can actually pick how open that you want for this relationship to be.
And do both parties get to pick?
Absolutely. Okay. So this is something that is discussed ahead of time. When you first meet, or a couple meets, and the birth mother meets ahead of time, they have the discussion of, do you want and how open do you want for the adoptive process to be, so that we can make an appropriate match.
Okay. Yes? And I think one of your tips, and I'm probably going to word it a little bit differently, but really kind of check in with yourself.
Yes.
And I think that's really important when you're deciding whether or not you want to do open or closed adoption, because it's definitely a very different process, I would assume. And if you do something that you're really not feeling comfortable with, it can probably do more harm than help at that point. So absolutely. I love that tip that you had. Yes. One other question that I had as you were going through the tips is, I think there's definitely a group of people who adopt because they have always wanted to adopt, and they can have their own children, but they still want to adopt, and it's just in them to do that.
Their calling.
It is. Yes. And then there are those that have struggled to have their own biological child for all these years. So I can imagine the emotional intensity that you see a lot with couples that come in. Can you talk to the audience a little bit about that piece?
Yeah, it is. It can be very emotional, and a big group that I work with are people that do struggle with infertility, and that is a great area where people go back and forth, and they may not be sure of what they want to do. So there is that, and that's why it's so important to go through the therapeutic process as well too. I think that is going to be it's a super part to go through, to make sure that you have your self-checks and you're making the right choice based on what your needs are.
And in general, I'm just curious, so we're talking private adoption in the States, right? And so what is kind of an expected cost that couples can anticipate through this process?
That's a loaded question, right?
That's a loaded question,
But I'm sure they're wondering.
Well, you know what? That is a great question to have, because obviously adoption, when you're going private adoption, it can be more expensive. However, you have to be able to know exactly what you want. If you're going the foster care route, then it could be near to nothing. However, the process is a little bit different. So you have to go ahead and do your investigative work to see what you are willing to invest. People have different opinions on what they would prefer, and that's why it's good to do your due diligence as well too.
Great, great.
Yeah, and I think just contacting an agency that they really trust, and that they have the legal representation, they have the therapeutic connection. Having all those pieces will really, I guess, make the the process not seem so difficult.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And just out of curiosity, so as a mental health professional, what becomes your role in the process? Are you more working with the birth mom, the couple? And I'm assuming also single people adopt.
You know what? I do all three. I cannot do all three at one time. And when I say all three, I might be working with an adoptive person that was adopted years ago and is now needing therapeutic or even wants to reconnect. I do that.
That's cool.
It's awesome. I love it. I do home studies as well too. I work with birth mothers that seek me out and say, guess what? I'm not sure what I want to do. Can you help me? Right. And I'm a part of the Florida Adoption Council, and you guys can look that up, which is an amazing organization that is linked to everything to do with adoption. So
yeah, and we our audience is national, and so I guess maybe just letting them know what their options are if they're not in Florida.
If you are not in Florida, there is an adoption council that should be in each and every state. So what you want to do is to look that up and to see what your options are, because the laws and rules are going to be different in each state.
Right.
And Florida is one of the few states that when you adopt in Florida and the mother signs in the hospital, it's done. So that is one of the few states, and a lot of people do come to Florida for that reason.
Oh, okay, that's interesting tidbit that might be helpful to our audience.
Yes.
So can you tell the audience how they can get a hold of you?
Sure, they can get a hold of me by my website, Alexia McLeod. That's AlexiaMcleod.com.
Okay, great. And we are so happy that you were here, and do you have anything that the audience would benefit from, a free little giveaway?
Absolutely. I'd love it. Go to my website. I would love it to be able to give you, the audience that is tuning in today, a free copy of my ebook that is on adoption. Go ahead and tune in on my website, and I'd love to take a look.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being our guest today, and we're really happy to have you.
Yes.
Yes, and we hope that this information was helpful to you and the resources that Alexia gave. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook, where you can interact with our guests, like Alexia, ask questions. We have information and things like that. So on Facebook, it's the Couples Corner South Florida. You'll see a picture of Susan and I, and you know you're in the right spot, so like that page. We thank you so much for tuning in. Again, I'm Katie Lemieux.
And I'm Susan Block, and thank you for watching.
All right.